So what is the LSAT, the Law School Admissions Test? It's a standardized test that was first introduced in 1948, and it's required for admission to law school. It consists of 5 sections. So there is one writing section, which is not graded by the test-taking organization, but could potentially be evaluated by law schools to which you apply. And then there are 3 different multiple-choice sections: reading comprehension, analytical reasoning, and logical thinking. One of these will be repeated, so you could have 2 analytical reasoning sections, for example, one of which will not be graded. You're not going to know which one it is. The test uses that to develop further tests. So how is the LSAT scored? Scores range from a low of 120 to a high of 180. 70% of all scores fall between a 143 and a 163, so it's a classic bell curve. How to study for the LSAT? Without question, practice, practice, practice is the best way to prepare yourself for the test. Repeated use of practice tests under simulated conditions is the best way to prepare. Whether you prepare alone or with a commercial test taker is an individual decision and should be considered when signing up for the test.
So what is the CAS? The CAS is an acronym for Credential Assembly Service. Some of you might have known it previously under its name of LSDAS, Law School Data Assembly Service. It's the same entity, they've just changed the name. So what is it? It's a service that assembles and summarizes data from your transcripts, your letters of recommendation, writing samples, LSAT scores, etc., and transmits that information to law schools upon application. Most ABA-approved law schools, I will qualify that and say I'm not aware of any ABA-approved law school that does not require registration with the CAS as a prerequisite to application. I want you to just note this because I do get this from applicants once in a while. When you go online and you register for the LSAT, that's one registration. That does not constitute the same thing as registering for the CAS. So make sure that you've registered for both. So what's in the CAS report? Well, your undergraduate academic summary. The CAS takes copies of your transcripts from all domestic institutions attended and summarizes them on a 4.0 GPA scale. Why 4.0, you might say? Well, not every institution works on a 4.0 scale. So this is the Law School Admissions Council's way of helping law schools compare apples to apples, so to speak. You'll see there, study abroad transcripts are not included in the academic summary report and won't factor into their 4.0 scale of your GPA. Any kind of summer courses you took to get that, for example, biology credit, at local community college, those transcripts are not only required to be submitted, but they will factor into your academic summary report. What else is included? Your LSAT scores. All of the LSAT scores you've taken in within the last 5 years will be included there. Writing samples and letters of recommendation. Something new to the CAS this year is the evaluation. That is not required by most law schools. Some do require it. Read each application carefully. Others consider it optional, which means just that. It's still relatively new service that's out there, a new kind of measurement tool, so law schools are still kind of trying to take its temperature as to how useful it will be. If you submit them an evaluation, that will also be included in your CAS report.
So first you need to define your potential list of schools. The first way to start is by comparing your GPA and LSAT scores against the different schools' medians. That's a wonderful place to start, but it's not the best place to end. There's much more that should go into this decision than just running the numbers. After you've decided that you're competitive at specific schools, you should next look at the different academic programs that the schools offer. Perhaps you have an interest in a certain type of law. You should look at schools that offer many courses in that area. Perhaps you're interested in a joint degree program. That could drive the decision of what is an appropriate choice for you. Next, you should look at law school communities because it's a fact that people tend to do better where they're happier. So if you do not like urban environments, you shouldn't apply to a law school in New York City, for example. If you learn better in a small classroom, perhaps you shouldn't apply to a very large law school where your section will be extremely large. Next, you want to look at graduate placement. You want to look at where the attorneys are working geographically, what cities they're going to, if that agrees with your future plan. And you should look at graduate placement as to what type of jobs are they doing. Do you see a lot of graduates going into academia? Do you see them going to corporate law firms? Take a look at that and see if that jives with what your plans are as well. Finally, personal concerns and needs. There can be anything from financial restraints that you may or may not have to the considerations of a significant other who has geographical requirements. Filling out the application. As most law schools admit on a rolling admissions basis, it's in your best interest to fill out and apply as early as possible. It's important here to mention application questions regarding misconduct. It's very, very important that you answer these questions honestly. Law schools and the bars of the various jurisdictions take this extremely seriously, and to the extent that you have misinformed or failed to inform a law school of any kind of history with respect to misconduct, you could be expelled from law school, you could be refused permission to sit for the bar exam. So it's something to be taken seriously, it's something to be answered honestly. Specifically, you should see your pre-law advisor for help answering these questions if you're not sure as to how to proceed. The personal statement. Some very general dues of the personal statement. Number 1, follow all instructions regarding topics and length. Your goal should be 2 pages, double-spaced with acceptable margins, and a font of no smaller than 11. Use proper grammar and punctuation. Start with a good first sentence. Remember that law school admissions committees are literally reading thousands of these documents, so you want to get them interested and keep them interested. A word about fraternity, sorority, and athletic experiences. They can certainly provide excellent fodder for personal statements, but you need to make sure that you expand them beyond just that into something bigger and more relevant to your future. And tying your essay in with why you have selected the law as a vocation. Most law schools will let you write about pretty much anything you want. For those that require an application to discuss why you want to practice law, make sure to answer the question as specifically as it is asked. But with respect to tying your essay into why you have selected law as a vocation, your entire essay doesn't have to consist of why you've chosen law, unless that is your choice. A few carefully crafted sentences could explain to any admissions committee why this is the next logical step for you. Don'ts of the personal statement. Don't misspell words or use improper grammar. Don't use cliches or quote others extensively. Also, don't give your personal statement a title. It's not a short story. And don't drop footnotes. It's not a research paper. Don't talk in the third person or gush about law school or the legal profession. Don't just recite your resume in narrative form. Tell the admissions committee something about yourself that they don't already know from looking at your resume and looking at your transcripts. Remembering that this is probably as close as you're going to get to a personal interview, so make it count. Don't send in recipes, multimedia presentations, or modeling photos. Some personal statement sample topics. There's the ever popular overcoming hardships or trauma. If you'd like to speak to this, by all means do so. But if you don't really have a personal hardship or trauma that you feel is relevant, don't worry about it. Most people don't, and everyone has an interesting story to tell. You could talk about a life-changing experience or special accomplishments. Anything that will give the admissions committee a more three-dimensional look at you as an individual. Next, on to letters of recommendation. Very often schools will have a required number and a recommended number. You always want to supply the school with their recommended number because that's obviously their preference. Most schools request 2 letters. Letters should come from professors who know you relatively well. And it's better to have a letter from a professor who taught you in a small upper level class than one who taught you in a large introductory lecture hall your freshman year. The best letters come from professors who compare you favorably to other students and can speak to more than just what the grade you got in the class was. And the worst letters come from those who write them reluctantly, and it's fairly obvious after you've read a number of them which are which. It bears mentioning that to the extent you are on campus, make the request for a letter of recommendation in person. Don't just shoot the professor an email if you happen to be able to see the individual in person. This is for two reasons. Number one, you're asking for a personal favor, so it's the right way to approach the situation. But number two, you can tell a lot by your professor's reaction to your request from their body language and what have you about how enthusiastic they are going to be about writing this letter from you. These are things you could not glean from an email. Finally, we have some helpful resources. Obviously, there's the American Bar Association, LSDAS, and LSAC websites. There's the American Bar Association Official Guide to ABA-approved law schools, where you can find all the information with respect to enrollment data and LSAT and GPA grids. Your pre-law advisor can help you, and there are handouts, resources for the pre-law candidate that are available at the front desk of the Career Center. So this presentation is in no way meant to take the place of individualized advice, but just to work as a supplement to it. So we are here to help you, and good luck in your decision of whether or not to apply to law school.